All right, so we are in part 3 of our series, Red Letter Living, part 3 of Red Letter Living, and I hope you've been enjoying this series as much as I have. We finish it out next week. Next week's our last one. So, how many of you guys ever passed out before? Show of hands. How many people have passed out? I have passed out before. This has nothing to do with my story, but my brother, some of you know my brother, he got his ears pierced when he was 19, and he passed out doing it. So, glad he's not your pastor, right? One time, right, Mom and Dad? One time, I was working outside, and I had not drank enough water, and I didn't eat enough food. Okay, so those are essential things in life, right? Those give you strength. If you do not eat enough food and you do not drink enough water, it's hard to do things. So I was working outside, I didn't drink nearly enough water, and it was really hot, and I went to go start a lawnmower, and when I did, I hit my funny bone, my elbow, on the back gate, and it really hurt more than normal. I was like, that really hurts. And whenever my brother was helping, I was like, man, I hit my elbow, that really hurt. He went, okay, I don't care. I said, okay. And I walked back, and I remember being like, I'm getting sleepy, I just need to take a seat. And I leaned on the back of the truck, and then I woke up in the middle of the street like this. I don't even know how I got to the street. I think I started to wander. My sunglasses were like this on my face. I woke up to my brother going, what are you doing? I was like, I'm sorry, and I got up, and I was like, I just need to sit in the truck. And so I went to go to the truck and say the truck was here. I literally was going like this, trying to get to the truck. Like, oh, gosh. And he didn't help me at all. He just, watched me. I eventually fell asleep in the truck for 10 minutes. It was weird. It's weird when you just, all of a sudden, you don't know what happens. But if you do not have enough water, if you do not have what will give you strength, it's easy to happen, right? Because you lose the source of your strength. If something isn't connected to its source, it loses all strength. All technology, phones, laptops, all that stuff, if you do not connect it to the source of its strength at some point, eventually it's not going to have any strength left. So in this series, what we've been doing throughout this series is we've been talking about the 7 I am statements that Jesus made. Jesus made 7 I am statements in John. We've been talking about 4 of those I am statements. And what we've been doing is we've been looking at that I am statement. We've been figuring out, okay, what can we learn from his I am statement? How can our life look different because of who Jesus says he is? So today we're going to be looking at John chapter 15. If you have your Bibles, you can open up to John chapter 15, and your Bible apps also be up on the screen as well. John chapter 15, we're going to start in verse 5. John 15, verse 5. Here's Jesus talking. Here's what he says. He says, I am the vine, you are the branches. If a man remains in me and I in him, he will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. So here he's talking to the disciples. He's at the Last Supper, and he's talking to the disciples. And the disciples, when they hear this, they're Jewish boys, they would have known what he was referring to here. When Jesus says, I am the vine, they understand that because back in the Old Testament, they were referred to as the vine. The Israelite people, God's chosen people, were referred to as the vine. But anytime they heard that, it was a bad thing. Because God was always saying, you are a vine that bears no fruit, so because of that, my wrath is going to come on you. That's what God has always said there. But here, Jesus is taking it and saying, the thing that you cannot be, I am. That you were supposed to be the vine, you did not bear any fruit, I am the vine for you now. I am the vine and you are the branches. I am doing what you could not do. Simply, this is the gospel message. This is what the gospel is. The gospel is we are supposed to be perfect and up to a standard that we can never reach. But Jesus came and became the person that we could not so that his payment on a cross could actually pay for our crime, for our punishment, for our debt. Could actually pay for it. So he starts with that. And then in verse 6, he continues on. Jesus says, if anyone does not remain in me, you are like a branch that is thrown away and withers. Such branches are picked up, thrown into the fire, and burned. So he says, take a tree, and you take a branch off of a tree. Is that branch ever going to produce fruit? No, because it's not connected to the tree. It's eventually going to wither away and die. If you have an apple tree at your house and a bunch of branches fall off, it's not going to grow apples, right? If a tree does not do what it's supposed to do, if let's say you have an apple tree, it doesn't grow any apples, what good is it? Because it's not doing what it's supposed to do. It can be firewood, that's about it. But if it's not producing the fruit that it's supposed to produce, there's no point in it. There's no good in it. And we can only produce the fruit that we are called to do when we are connected to the vine. Because he is the vine and we are the branches. He is the vine, we are the branch. When we are connected to the source of our strength, we will actually start to produce fruit. So Jesus says, I am the vine, you are the branches. What does that mean for us? What does that mean for you and for me? What can we get out of this? And I'm going to talk about 3 things that this means for us. And if you have your notes, you can take notes. We have binders out there by our Next Step tables. If you want to take one of those binders, if it helps you take notes, they're free for you to take. They're for you to help take notes. But here's 3 things that we can learn from the fact that Jesus is the vine and we are the branches. Number 1 is this: pruning is inevitable. Pruning is inevitable. That eventually you will be pruned. How many of you love gardening? You love to garden. How many of you hate it? Yep, I'm with you. I hate gardening. The problem is my wife likes the way it looks when it's gardened, so I have to do it sometimes. And here's the worst part about gardening. You guys know what the worst part of gardening is? Pulling weeds, right? Because it's constant. It never ends. You have to get really deep in order to get it all out, because most of the time I'm just pulling from the top, and eventually in 2 weeks they're back. I hate doing that. I hate gardening. It's one of my least favorite things to do, especially the weeding part of it. But you have to do it, right? If you don't do it, eventually whatever's there is going to die. So pruning is inevitable, and eventually you will be pruned. When you are connected to the source of your strength, expect pruning. Here's what Jesus says in verses 1 and 2. He says, I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes so that it will be even more fruitful. He says, listen, if you're not bearing any fruit, I'm cutting you off. And if you are bearing fruit, I'm going to cut you back. We would say, I don't want to be cut back. Like, if an apple's producing an apple, if an apple tree's producing apples, like, let the apple tree do its thing, right? We have apples. Why need to prune back? We hate that. We don't want to be cut back. None of us like doing that. But why does Jesus say he's going to prune us? Because when he prunes us, we will then produce more fruit. More fruit. Now, we might have a little bit now, but when he cuts us back, we will then produce more fruit. He wants us to live to our fullest potential. And sometimes pruning is what it takes for you to live to your fullest potential. And you know what? You want to live to your fullest potential, don't you? Like, if you go to the gym and work out, when you get to the point where you're like, you know what, I'm good. I've lifted as much weights as I need to lift. We don't get to that point, right? Because we want to eventually grow. For some of you that are like me, like that have a gym membership and haven't gone for like way too long, like you're like, I'm never at the point where I'm like, okay, I'm at the best physical peak I can be at. I'm good to go. We want to go to our full potential, don't we? In our family, you want to be a better spouse. You want to be a better parent. All of us want to. All of us want to live to our full potential with that. In work, all of us want to live to our full potential. In fact, if you're at work and you don't feel like you're living to your full potential, and you don't feel like that you're being utilized correctly, what's going to happen? It's hard to work there. You get depressed. You need to do that. All of us want to live to our full potential, right? All of us want to do that. But not all of us are willing to be pruned in order to do it. Where Jesus says, I want you to grow in your fruit. And that's going to take some pruning. Pruning is inevitable. You might be thinking, okay, you keep saying fruit. What in the world does fruit mean? What does that mean? Here's what it means. Paul says in Galatians chapter 5, verse 22 to 23. Here's what he says. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things, there is no law. What's the fruit that God's trying to grow? All of those. Now, do you notice it doesn't say fruits of the Spirit? It's not plural. This is one fruit. You will grow in all of these. It's not one or the other. It's not, well, I'm good with love, patience, I'm not very good, kindness. It doesn't work that way. God wants you to grow in the one singular fruit, which produces love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. The one fruit. In fact, if you take one of these out, they all fall apart. It's hard to have joy in life if you don't love people, isn't it? If you don't have love in your life, it's hard to have any kind of joy. If you have no joy in your life, how do you have peace? How are you okay with your circumstances? If you have no peace, how in the world can you be patient? How many of you try to go someplace and you are just not having a good day and somebody in front of you is going way too slow? Are you patient? No, right? Because you don't have peace. If you don't have patience, it's really hard to be kind to people. And all these fall apart. Jesus wants you to grow in your fruit of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And that's going to take pruning. The time that I've grown the most in my faith, the time that I've grown the most in my walk was a year before we launched this church. That was the time I've grown the most. In my entire life, that is the time I have grown the most. And here is why. Because a year before we were supposed to launch, the church that was going to fully support us dropped out. We had no money. The teams we were supposed to build everybody up through, there was no teams anymore, which is myself and my wife. My wife had to come because she had to come. And then I had no job. I had a job lined up, and for 4 months, I didn't work anywhere. It was the hardest time of my life. It was. I remember I would try to go to sleep, and just my heart was racing. I was like, maybe I drank too much coffee today. And Erica said, no, that's called a panic attack. That's what you're having. I had so much anxiety about what was going on because it was so uncertain. And I'm not a guy that worries. I'm normally fine. It was the hardest time in my life. It was the hardest time. But God took that time, and my faith is stronger, and my fruit is stronger because of that time. Do I ever want to do that again? No. I never want to. But at times, God will allow you to be pruned. And for some of you, you're being pruned right now. You're at a higher season of doubt, of restlessness, of anxiety. You just have a higher season of that where you just feel you're struggling right now. Maybe for you, it's your circumstances aren't going like you thought, and it's just hard for you right now, and you feel that. Here's what I want you to know. You didn't do anything wrong. This isn't happening because God is pouring out his wrath on you. That's not what's happening. He's pruning you. And if you stay connected to the source of your strength, which is the vine, if you stay connected, when you get through this season, you will have a stronger faith, and your fruit will grow. Number one, pruning is inevitable. Number two, his presence determines our position. His presence determines our position, determines who we are. See, John 15, this is found in between John 13 and John 18. Makes sense, right? John 13, here in John 13 is where we see Jesus is washing his disciples' feet, and he starts the Last Supper. We all know the Last Supper, right? And then John 18 is where we see Jesus is arrested, and we start the Easter process, which we're going to talk about next week. So here in John 15, this is all being talked about at the Last Supper. This is dinner conversation to his disciples. And here's one thing he says in verse 3 to his disciples. Says this, "You are already clean because of the word I have spoken to you." You are already clean because you believe what I told you. Could you believe that I am the resurrection? Because you believe that I am the way. Because you believe that, you're clean. In God's eyes, you are clean. Now remember what's about to happen. Jesus is about to be taken. He's about to be arrested. And all of his friends that he's talking to that says they are clean, all of those friends are about to leave. They're all about to abandon him. Peter's in here. Peter's the one who denies Jesus 3 times. And Peter's sitting here. And Jesus says to him and to the rest of the disciples that are all about to abandon Jesus at his biggest time of need, Jesus says to them, "You are clean because you have believed." We are elevated in God's eyes because of who Jesus is, because of that. See, all these people, they're going to abandon Jesus next. And for some of us, we have done that. Through our sin and through the way we've done life, we have abandoned him. But when we are in the vine and we are connected to the vine, to the source of our strength, and we are connected to him, when we are connected, Jesus doesn't see our sin, or God doesn't see our sin, he sees Jesus. Continue on in verse 4. Jesus says this, "Remain in me, and I will remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me." When you remain connected to the source of your strength, when you remain, God does not see your sin. He sees Jesus, because Jesus paid for that sin. When you are connected and you remain in him, you do not have to reach a level of sainthood in order to be accepted by God, but God sees you and he accepts you because he sees Jesus. What I found is when we feel like we've offended somebody, I actually heard this from Matt Chandler. When you believe you've offended somebody, you tend to avoid. I don't know if you ever heard that. For me, I remember one time when I was a youth pastor, I was preaching, and while I was preaching, as a youth pastor, I would say some things that I don't say as much now. I told a lot of poop stories back then because I thought I was cool doing that. And one time I said something about something sucks. I said the S word, sucks. And a parent got livid about it. They were furious because their high schooler heard the word sucks. That high school has got a long ways to go. So she found out she was in there, and I said it, and I saw her. I could just see her face, like, oh no. So once it was over, she went to my youth pastor, she went to my head pastor, and said that, hey, Eric said sucks. I don't ever want him preaching again. And I was like a youth intern at this point. And somehow I found out, the word got back to me that this parent was really upset. The next week when I saw this parent, you know what I did when I saw her from afar? Went the other direction. I was like, I am not talking to that parent. I don't want to deal with it. No way. Because when we offend, we tend to avoid, right? When we offend, we tend to avoid. That's what we all do. So for us, sometimes with God, we feel like we've offended God with our actions and with our life, with our sin. So we try to avoid him. Say, I'll go back to church when I've got my life straight. I'll go back when I figure some things out. Maybe you've invited someone to church, they go, I just need to figure some things out, then I'll come in. That's not how it works. That's not how it works. We don't have to be clean in order to meet God. In fact, God says, come to me and I will clean you. That's what he says. See, his presence elevates our position, number 2. And then number 3 is this. We have the ability to love. We have the ability to love. When I first got married, and some of you guys might be able to attest to this, but there were some things I didn't really know how to do as well that you would think would be normal stuff. I didn't put my dishes away as much as I should. I didn't do some of that tedious stuff. And then my wife, she took, when we had kids, what she decided to do is she had a door and she put some hooks on there for the girls' towels, because the girls would take a bath and then we would clean them up and we'd do the towel, and then the idea was we put the towel up on those hooks, right? Because that makes sense. Well, after every bath, I would do that, and I would wash them and dry them off, and when they were done being dressed, I was done. And wherever the towel was is where it was, because it's like a whole process of picking that sucker up and walking to the door that I'm about to walk out of, and I just want to do it. So every time the towels would be there. They would just be left on the floor. And then one day, Erica came up to me and was like, hey, you saw I put these hooks up, right? I was like, yeah, I saw. She's like, okay, you know how to put towels up, right? You know how to do that. It's not that hard for you, right? It's like, yeah, I guess I can do that. So I started eventually doing that. Now, here's what I did not do when I started doing that. Here's something I did not do. I did not take these towels. And every time I was done washing them, I did not say, oh, okay, here's these towels. My wife wants me to put them on those hooks. But we're not really connecting that well right now. Like, I'm not feeling the love that I used to feel with her. So I know putting these towels up this love will just bloom, and then all of a sudden I'll be in love with her again. Ready? Here we go. Boom! I'm in love again. That never happened. It never happened. You know why I'd eventually put the towels up? Because I loved my wife. I didn't do it so that love would spark. I did it because I already love her. See, we aren't obedient to God in order to earn his love. We love God, and what follows is obedience. Does that make sense? We love God first, and then obedience follows. Here's what Jesus says in verse 8 through 10. Jesus says this, "This is to my Father's glory, that you bear much fruit, showing yourselves to my disciples. As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Now remain in my love. If you obey my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have obeyed my Father's commands and remain in his love." We try to love God first. We do everything we can to love God first, and obedience will follow. It's not the other way around. So how do we do this practically? Like, how do we find a practical way to do this? And here's what I do, and this is not for everybody, okay? This is not a blanket statement of what you need to do. You need to figure out what works for you. There are some things that we all should be doing, no matter who you are, no matter how God has made you, you should be doing certain things. You should always be reading your Bible. I don't care who you are. You should always be reading your Bible. You should always be praying. You should always be attending church. There are some things that is for everybody. But besides that, you need to figure out what produces your love for God more. And then figure out what takes away your love for God and try to get rid of it. So let me give you some examples for me. I love podcasts. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I listen to a lot of leadership podcasts and other sermons. I just love to hear other people's sermons. I love to try to grow in my speaking ability, and I just love to kind of be fed as well. So I listen to a lot of podcasts, and my love for God grows by listening to podcasts. It does. There's a bunch of books that I keep trying to read that I listen to Audible or I'll read at home that just grows my love for him. I like music. I'm a big music guy, so there's certain music that if I listen to, it grows my love for him. Here are some things that don't grow my love for him, so I have to cut it back. Social media has never grown my love for God. Never. If anything, it's grown my hatred towards some people. That's all about what it's done. And I will just find myself, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I'll just find myself just scrolling aimlessly and not doing, and then I'm like, I don't have time to read. I was on Facebook for a half hour. So I have to cut back from social media because if I do it too much, then all of a sudden I don't love God as much because I'm not spending time with him. I have to cut back on my social media. I have to do that. There are some shows that I don't watch, and I'm not telling you what shows they are because I don't want to say like, hey, you can't watch these shows either. There's when I watch certain shows that they just take my love away from God, and I can just feel it. I don't know what it is. Like I'll watch it like, that just doesn't sit well with me, so I have to stop watching it. I'm not saying it's a sin to watch those shows. I'm just saying for me, I have to cut it back. Because if I don't, then eventually my love for God will decrease. So what you need to do, figure it out practically. What you need to do is pay attention to your heart. Pay attention to it. Pay attention to what is bringing out that love for God in you and amplify it. And figure out what's taking your love away from God and push it down and get rid of it. Try to cut it out. Because when we're connected to the source of our strength, we are connected to the source of our strength. He will empower us to be obedient to him, not so that we can earn salvation, but because we love him. Our goal is we should be growing in our love for him. You lose strength when you aren't connected to the source. You lose strength when you aren't connected to the source. I'm going to close with this. There's this new Instagram account that I told my small group about that I highly recommend you look up. It's called Preachers in Sneakers. Okay, look it up. Some of you guys know it. Here's what this Instagram account does. It finds these really famous celebrity pastors, and it finds what they're wearing when they're preaching and tells you how much it is that they're wearing. So these pastors that are in front of big churches, and I'm telling you, there are pastors that are wearing $1,000 pants, $2,000 shoes, and that like, as a pastor, that's just so gross to me. It's just because we talk about giving, we talk about tithing, and then as a church, our goal of the church is not for me to make a lot of money, okay? The goal of church is to help people. I don't mind pastors making money, but there should be a cap. I truly believe that. And so the idea of celebrity pastors drives me nuts. I hate it. So I was scrolling through his Instagram account, not loving God through it. I was just scrolling through it. And I'm just seeing there $2,000 shoes, $500 shirts, like all that stuff. Like, what is happening? And here's what I'm afraid happens for a lot of people, and I don't want it to happen here. I'm afraid that some people think that when they're connected to the pastor, that they're connected to the source. That's not your source. And these celebrity pastors, that's what they're kind of producing, is all these people that are so connected to them. Don't be connected to the pastor. That's being connected to a branch. You're not going to produce any fruit. You should not be connected to me. You should be connected to your source. If the only time you spend time with God is here, you're not connected to the source. You're connected to me. And I promise you, I will disappoint you. I promise you it will not be enough. I promise you, you're not going to produce any fruit by being connected to me. You need to be connected to the source. Should you come here and learn? Of course, I encourage you to come. But this can't be it. This can't be it. Because then you are just a branch by itself, trying to produce fruit. You cannot produce fruit unless you are connected to the source. So how can you make a difference? That's our goal at Impact, is to be a church that makes a difference. How can you make a difference if you aren't connected to the source of your strength? You can't. You can maybe make some disciples. Maybe they're just going to look like you, and you're making a bunch of people that are also not connected to the source. That's no good. We don't want that. We need to connect ourselves to the source of our strength. So as we close, we're going to play our theme song. The worship team is going to come up, and we're going to pray. I just want to encourage you to think practically about how you can be connected to the source in a better way so that you can grow fruit. Some of you are going through pruning right now, and you don't know what to do. Keep going. Stay connected to the source. And when you get past it, man, your fruit is going to grow. I know it's hard, but stay connected. Remember that it's not about what you do, but it's about who he is, and that love comes first before obedience. We're not obedient to try to earn that love. We love God, which produces obedience. Stay stay connected to the source. Let's pray. God, thank you for being the God that wants what's best for us and wants us to live out our fullest potential. And I pray that as we are here and we continue to grow and learn more about you and just connect to you, that you just convict us if we are only trying to connect to you on Sundays. Help us to find ways to be the hands and feet of you, to find ways throughout the week to grow our love for you. Help us stay connected to the source of our strength, because if we don't have strength, we can't get through this. We need you, our only source of strength. We love you, we praise you. In your son's name.